this is a really interesting concept, is that especially with everything that's happening with politics and everything right now, right, is it's so easy to get caught up in the movie and the drama of life, right? And get involved in politics. I really try not to do it because...
Oh, I don't.
Here it is, bro.
Oh, dude, I love it. Love it.
Isn't that amazing?
Is that now what, like, is that the color? Like, did you have it painted that color? Did you have it set up that way, or that's what it was?
No, this was the color. So this is not a Gibson. They don't make Gibson in this color. This is an Epiphone. Okay. But I don't like lacquered guitars. I like to feel the wood. And so I just searched for a model with this color that was, see the grain, it's stained.
Yep.
And so I just found one with a really good neck, and then I took everything else off.
Upgraded the pickups, yeah.
No, all the wiring, all the pots, all the capacitors. It's like a hobby.
If it's got
I just got in there.
If it's got a nice neck, if the neck is very playable and it feels good, and you upgrade the electronics, it's just as good as a Gibson, if not better.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna, if I did a Gibson that way, if I got an SG, first off, I would have had to find one that was stained, and then I think they make a special like that. And then I would have had to find one with a great neck and all that. I just happened to come across this one, and I was like, boom. So it's like I've always playing guitar. I've always soldered, my pickups and always swapped them out. And so lately, I've been playing guitar since I was 11. And so lately, there, like in the past 10, 15 years, there's been this like craftsman. You know how there's like craft beer? As you know, you're a musician.
Yeah.
There's like craft.
Sir and D'Angelico and all these different micro brands
and even
that are popping up.
Boutique like pedal makers and amp makers and custom hand wound pickups and all. So anyways, it's like a renaissance right now.
No, I forget the name of the company. There's this micro guitar maker. I forget the name what it is, and it's like a Telly style guitar, and I played it, and it was like fucking amazing. It just felt like perfection. It sounded perfect. It was just, and they're like $6-7 a pop, and it's a lot of money for a guitar.
I know.
And I forget the name of the company, but like I had a brief period of time where I was kind of jonesing on one of those and like thinking about doing it and like maybe selling a few other ones. But I also had you're like I want this guitar. I want this guitar. Yeah. What do I got to do to get it? But I had that SG that you have. I had, and I regret it still to this day. Gibson had like a limited run. Like, I don't know, this is going back probably like 10 years ago. They were like they were called like the 60s. It was like the 60s special or something like that. And they did Les Pauls and they did SGs. And it was like
and it had the soap bar on it, right?
Yeah, the P90s, yep. And it was like cream white. It was like cream white with the black headstock. And it had black P90s. I mean, dude, it was so cool and it sounded so good. But I sold it or traded it for something, and I regret it. I regret it to this day. And now they go for like a few thousand. And it was like a $900 guitar when it came out.
Oh yeah,
it was like
They have you would love it, dude. Down here in Miami, they have a shop called Walt and Grace.
Okay,
and they sell their high-end guitars. Like they have Fender now has who makes they have a custom shop where they put out like store? Heavily. No, Fender does. And
just Fender custom shop.
These guys sell them. They're $5,000, $6,000 guitars. So they come heavily, they call it relic. It looks like it's old and everything's to spec. And they sell badass vintage motorcycles, badass vintage cars, and badass vintage amps. Yeah, so it's like you go in there, it's like candy. You're like, oh my gosh.
Throw some vintage watches in there, and then I'm all. That's the whole thing.
They have watches. They have vintage watches.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
No, they have a vintage watch section, man.
That's cool, man.
And they have an espresso bar.
Oh man, those guys know what's up.
Bro, you come in here,
that.
yeah. And
hell
dude,
yeah.
the amplifiers are hand wired. They start like they made this company Two Rock, who Doyle Bramwell plays for, and John Mayer plays their amps also. These amps start at $6,000. Oh,
that's wild. That's wild.
And they're so badass. I played them. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in heaven.
When I come down there to visit you, we got to go. We got to go there.
It's so cool. It's such a dude's thing, man. It's so rad. They have a motorcycle in there.
I love that.
That's like $80,000. I was looking at this motor. I'm like, oh my gosh. I got to ride my Triumph over there because I got my Triumph here too. So anyway, that's what I've been up to.
You ride a lot now?
I've been riding. Yeah, I don't ride I rode exclusively when I was just back in California. I exclusively rode. I wasn't ever, because I didn't have a car then. So I was on the motorcycle in Los Angeles. I loved it in Los Angeles because I don't have to wait at lights. I don't have to do anything. So in LA, where it doesn't rain, in Southern California, Newport Beach, I'd ride down to San Diego. I'd go up into the mountains of Santa Barbara, and it was amazing. Yeah, it rains a little more here, and they have laws where in California you can split lanes, which means that when there's cars here, you can go right through the middle of them.
Yeah.
And that's called splitting. And so that's great. And that's in California, but you can't do it here. It's illegal. So
you can't you can't do it here either. I had a bike for about 3 some odd years. And I got into it. And I enjoyed it very much, but then I decided to let it go. I just kind of felt like, it was just upping the odds of something going wrong, increasing the odds of a problem.
Exactly. That's what
I do enough. I do enough wild shit to where that was one that I got off my plate, I guess. But I enjoyed it. I mean, being out there, when you're out there and the wind is just blowing at you, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
Did I ever tell you the story of when I rode across country?
No, that's incredible.
So I woke up one morning, right?
Yes, you did tell me this, and you were just like, fuck
I told you that story, right?
Yeah.
Gone. Rode that thing cross country is the hardest, most difficult thing one of them that I've ever done. I like hours into the ride, but it's funny how you do things like that. And then you're like, I'm not stopping or else.
Yeah.
But no,
sometimes you just got to go.
Sometimes you got to just go and don't question it. And jump in the deep end and go.
Yep.
That's what makes life fun.
Did we ever talk about Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
Mm-hmm.
We did.
That's what inspired me. That's what inspired me to make that trip. So tell me what you think about it. What'd you get out of it?
I read that book probably 20 years ago. And which was way past when it came out. I mean, it came out in the 70s.
It came out. But
that book hit me like an anvil on the top of the head. I felt that book to be so powerful in terms of like the way people think and like look at the world, and how like this guy goes on this incredible journey psychologically. Forget about the physical journey but like the story of the character Phaedrus, and how, trying so hard to figure out the answer. What's the answer? To just come to the point of where like there kind of is no answer, and everybody's free to go about it, and like what I thought was so powerful is, and this is a spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't read the fucking book, but
it's only been out for 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. So tough shit at this point. But
probably
like
60 years.
Yeah. But like the character, how like society deemed him as crazy. But after he goes through this whole experience, gets better, and then sees this thing with his son, and like, really, is he crazy, or is he the one who, is the searcher, the one who's asking the questions, looking for the answer? Is the pure fact that you're searching and looking for the answer does that make you not insane in comparison to the people who are just accepting of the reality that's kind of put upon them by, you know, the establishment that's out there, you know, and how, like, you know, the classical thinking versus the romantic thinking. And I love that book. That book has inspired so much of my thinking and music that I've made and all sorts of stuff.
In which way?
So, like,
like how in direct application to your business and music, how does that?
Well, so the project, my musical project, is called The War on Fear. And I made this character, and you may have seen it in some of my stuff, like the TV head guy. And that TV
the
head
one
character
behind your head.
Yeah. So,
I love that.
Well, that's kind of, well, I can't, I'll shoot you a picture, but like we have this character who's got like an old school fucking 70s TV for a head in a suit. And I named that character Phaedrus. And that character is kind of the central character of the music, because, like, dude, I'm 42 years old. I'm not trying to sing in videos and shit. And I have this, I have this character, and the character kind of represents like this amalgamation of like every man and like all of us, and like how we're kind of just like these observers of like these cultural and societal things that are just going by. And I've always been super influenced by that book and how, you know, what's normal, what's crazy, what's insane. Yeah. And that there's no real answers. There's no real answers. The maybe what I think, because I don't like to fucking, you know, this is what I think, because who the fuck knows? But maybe just the pursuit of the questions and being interested in understanding the different perspectives, you know, maybe that's the answer. Just the practice of wondering, the practice of being curious, the practice of being open to the fact that maybe everything that, you know, is in front of you is not really what is what. And I feel comfortable in that. I feel comfortable in being a question asker is more important than being someone who finds the answer.
Yeah, I think what happens is that we get this rigidity in our thinking that comes from thinking we have the answers. And I think that is based on fear, right? Definitely. It's like, I am faced with the unknown, and so I need to have an answer. And I found that in my own self that knowing, they say that. I think even, look at that.
That was cool. That. You just went knowing.
So they like even like Miyamoto Musashi, this is a big part of Zen, you know, is the beginning of knowing is forgetting everything. And it's really that concept of Shoshin, you know, where of like going into the moment with an empty cup. Because when we go into a moment with expectations and ideas, we just rob ourselves of the magic and the beauty of that moment. Being an artist is constantly trying to just clear the mind and be there. But and martial artists too, with jiu-jitsu. That's a big part of like being like, okay, I'm a beginner, I'm a white belt, you know.
Well, any artist knows, any artist who does it knows or feels on a certain level that like you're a conduit more than you are a maker. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing it, this is how I feel. I mean, when you're doing it at the highest level and you're in that moment, especially like songwriting and stuff, like it's like that thing was out there somewhere and you were the antenna to receive it. And then you receive it and then it passes through you as a filter, but you didn't make it. You didn't like, it wasn't like, you got your pieces of wood together and your steel and you said, okay, I'm going to fashion this thing together. And it was like you connected to something and then that thing passes through you. And then there's a piece of you in it because it's filtering through you. But like the name of the game is moving out of the way and letting it flow. And that to me has always been how I've felt about making art and, specifically in songwriting and making music and that kind of stuff. The
or,
shit's out there.
Or even like business, where Steve Jobs talked about this a lot, where, he's like, innovation comes not from focus groups. Like you have to like get out of your head. If you want to do something truly revolutionary, you want to be a real entrepreneur, then you have to think outside of that box. That's why for Steve Jobs, like such a big part of Apple was based on his calligraphy and big class, and based on going to India and doing psychedelics and meditation.
Just letting the world flow.
That. Breaking apart. Okay, so here's, you talk about the guitar. So when I first started learning guitar, you learn chords, right? We learn chords, then we start learning scales, then we start learning with scales come the patterns up and down the neck, right? You have to know those things, right? You have to learn the foundation. But this morning, like I was playing along with the song and I was like, okay, for me to truly, truly, truly connect as I'm soloing, I have to forget.
You let go.
The patterns. If I just play the same patterns or licks that I know, dude, a computer can do that. It's only when it's like, okay, just let it flow, let it go completely and just be in the moment. And that's when something original, and there's this feeling of this energy, right? That you're talking about, where you're like, you're a conduit. And when you feel that energy of the universe flowing through you, it's so fucking beautiful. It's addicting. You're just like, whoa, I'm part of this thing, right?
I've always compared soloing on guitar to like surfing, like riding a wave. I've always felt that playing a guitar solo is like surfing. You're riding that wave for as long as you can ride it, and can you land it home? You know what I mean? Can you take it all the way up to its peak, and then can you bring it in a smooth way? And like, how long can you stay on the wave? I've always felt like that. And you're right. I think the true improvisation is when you walk away from the forms and you're just feeling and you're not thinking.
It's so awesome. You know what else is like that is jujitsu.
Yeah, right? A lot of things. It's true.
When you're sparring, where you're like, okay, I need to be spontaneous here. I need to not do this and just flow. And all of a sudden you see some opportunity and you jump and you're on someone's back and you're just like, oh.
And
I just landed that wave.
It's just happening.
That was amazing.
Do you know who musician? He's a bass player. His name is Victor Wooten. You know who he is? Victor Wooten. He's like a jazz guy. I'm gonna send this to you. I highly recommend. It's you could read it, I guess. It's also an audiobook. I definitely recommend the audiobook because Victor Wooten narrates it, and he's like a New Orleans jazz bass player, very well spoken, interesting guy, and he has this book and it's called The Music Lesson. And it's a book about music theory, but it's not about music theory. It's about like life, and he narrates it. And you're not sure the whole time whether this is a true story or it's not a true story, but it's a beautiful book. It is amazing. And it's all about what we're talking about. It's all about how like, yes, there are rules and structures inside of music. It's a language, but that is only the beginning, and the way in is really the liberation away from all of those things, and how it's only about the feeling and the personal relationship that you have with why you're doing it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful book. I'm going to send it to you. It's amazing.
That's amazing. That's cool. What strikes me? Yeah. I think I might have told you before, Rick Rubin's podcast, Broken Record, where he interviews 4 parts of John Frusciante, the guitar player for the Chili Peppers. And you getting in the head of John Frusciante, you're like, this dude is an artist and he's only an artist. And that's all he is. And that's all he wants to be. He's on another planet, But David Lynch's autobiography, I was just listening to that, and that was the same thing. The filmmaker, and all he does now is paint, and teach meditation. And
it sounds like a great life, man. But I mean, would it be?
It is. But it's like we all have the ability to craft a life of an artist. Yes, you go about your day, right? Even doing your work, but there's this is a really interesting concept, is that, especially with everything that's happening with politics and everything right now, right? It's so easy to get caught up in the movie and the drama of life, right? And get involved in politics. I really try not to do it because
I don't.
I try and watch it because it's entertaining, but never get to where I'm so engaged. I know I've given you the metaphor before where, you are at a movie theater and there's someone in the front row and they're watching the movie theater and something happens on screen and they jump up and they start banging and kicking the screen. You'd be looking at them from like the fourth or fifth row and go, what is wrong with you, you lunatic? Right?
Yeah. But
that's the way so many people live their lives, right? They're so engaged in the drama of life and what happens when you do that is you fail to live as an artist. We almost have the life of an artist. There's this paradox, right? Which is so much of what Zen is about, to where we're in the world, but we're out of the world, right? So you can go about your day engaged in the world, but where you're still sitting in the seat of your consciousness as an artist. And that paradox is very difficult to explain, right? Very difficult to explain. But at the same time, that is what Zen is all about. That's why Zen, they study cones so much, because what is a cone? It's an unsolvable riddle. And us in the West, we want to solve everything. We want logic to solve everything. Yep. That's not the life of an artist. And so when you're like, man, that would be a great life, it's like, no, we can all live that life to that paradox of I'm always living as an artist. I'm doing like with what you're saying. I'm disengaged. I don't have expectations. That is really the true life of an artist, right? And being able to flow at all times through life. Now, some people, they might think, oh, but I want to just sit in a studio and just paint all day. But I don't know. For me, it's about going in and out of different scenes, but at the same time, having the artist studio in my mind and being disengaged from that in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think something that has been talked about a lot, and I think is true, is, a life well lived informs, great art. Even forget it. I mean, a life just heavily lived, even like pain and suffering and experience. And because like being an artist is like you're translating that through a medium. You're letting people know it's like you're putting out what it feels like, something that you went through. And that feeling is universally felt by other people. That's like a special thing. That's like a really special thing to where you're one individual who has a point of view on something. And then that point of view becomes transmutable, and many millions or however many people can connect and feel that feeling that you had when you were just kind of, feeling something on your own. And I think that is special. And me personally, like my favorite kind of art, and I kind of head towards like the down spectrum. Like what I think, maybe not the down spectrum, but what I think is the most incredible thing is that when you know that somebody's delivering a performance or some sort of a work of art and you can feel that pain, and you can feel that suffering, and you know that it's not an act. You know that this is not like the business of entertainment. This is not like people said, okay, you know what's going to be a really good product? Let's do this thing. And you know that when you see it, but you also know, like you're talking
like
about
an
Stevie Ray
Avengers
Vaughan.
movie, right?
Yes. Yeah. And you know, that shit's good for what it is. But you were talking before about Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like when Stevie Ray Vaughan is playing guitar, you know, you can see the fact that he's addicted to drugs. You can see the fact that he's strung out and fucked up. You can feel it, not see it. You can feel that this man is channeling a lifetime worth of pain through this instrument that he's found and connected to it. And that to me is always what I look for and I resonate with, because it's just like this therapeutic way of connecting everybody, because we're all suffering and we're all hurting and we're all going through stuff. And when that connection point happens, to me, that's one of the most special things that I've ever experienced in this life.
Yeah. Yeah. David Lynch talked about how after he did his almost like student film, Eraserhead. Have you ever seen it? It's so
no, I never saw it. I know of it.
Trippy. And dude, it's so weird and trippy that what's great about it is that the logic of it, right? There really is no logic in it. And it's very Zen in that respect. It's kind of like what we're talking about. So Eraserhead, but there are all these scenes that are connected not by logic, but by emotion and tone. And when he was first previewing it, the director, Mel Brooks, who's a comedian, right? Yeah. Came out of the screening and was like, this is a masterpiece. I want to back you because you were able to convey this emotion, this connective tissue of emotion, where the logic of it, if you went into it and you couldn't connect with your own heart as you were watching it, it's like Impressionist paintings or even Basquiat. I love Basquiat's paintings. It's like, if you're looking for logic, that's where you need to be trying to appreciate mathematics. This is about something emotional.
Channeling a feeling. Channeling a feeling.
Yeah. And so Mel Brooks came out and was like, you know, and there was something about like David Lynch, who did Twin Peaks and all, where
I only saw I saw Mulholland Drive, which was freaky as fuck.
Freaky, bro. His movies are so freaky, man.
I think I might have seen Lost
Heart with Nicolas Cage.
I didn't see that. I think I might have saw Lost Highway too.
Dude, how weird are his movies, right?
So like too weird for me.
You're just like going, dude, I have this feeling in like my stomach right now. I need to go home right now. Yeah, like it's not a horror
Lost
movie,
Highway guy.
There's something. Yeah.
That guy's scary, man. That dude with the phone at the party, like that guy was scary. I was afraid.
Right?
Yes.
He Blue Velvet, man, he has this ability. Wild at Heart with Nicolas Cage, I think in Laura Dern, is something is happening there where I remember it was the first David Lynch movie I saw. And I was in a theater and I was like, I don't feel good at all.
Yeah.
This is
That's how it makes you feel.
Yes. So Eraserhead, so Mel Brooks, the comedian, was like, you're a genius and I want to back your next movie. And the next movie he did was went from, like I said, like almost a student film that took like 4 years to make, then went on and did The Elephant Man. And I think it won 8 Oscars, including Best Picture. Wow. You know? And then after that, he was the hottest director in Hollywood. And George Lucas wanted him to do Return of the Jedi. And he was like, no, I can't step into your shoes and do that. So instead he did Dune.
Yeah. That's right. I didn't see that.
And it was the most
I never saw the original Dune.
Insane. He hated it. He made him take his name off of it. It was a disaster. And I love it. I love it because it's so weird. But yeah, anyways, what a lunatic. that guy was, but really to connect. And it's interesting that, you were talking about Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance, because I think that's what the purpose of Zen is really learning to disengage the logical mind so that we can feel and unlock that energy. We talked about this last week about, with the idea that with the untethered soul, that when we have an energy blockage, it manifests, it disrupts our energy, and it manifests in desire and fear. And I think Zen is like trying to unlock the logical mind, which keeps us from feeling that flow of energy that goes through us.
Without a doubt. And I think the separation between like romantic thinking and analytical thinking, the way he sets it up, that was like the first time I ever really thought about that. You know what I mean? That was, what was really interesting is it kind of made me like, it's the first time I was ever able to relate to something else about my own style of thinking. Like, my own style of thinking is probably more on the romantic side than it is on the is it classical, or is he calls it analytical? I forget what the.
I don't remember the book. It's been so long.
And then when he was talking about, the approach to the actual maintenance of the motorcycle, and because I always like thought of myself as like, yeah, that's not, I'm a people person, I know how to sell. I have artistic, leanings and creativity. And I always thought to myself like, well, I'm not, handy. I'm not mechanical. I'm not. But when he wrote about that process, I saw the romanticism in that process, which is kind of like, how Steve Jobs built Apple and manufacturing and all that kind of stuff. Like, he made it creative to have beautiful components in manufacturing. So the first time I read that book, I never like opened my brain to like, there is no one way. There is no one, everything informs each other. Like, all things are constantly informing each other, and it's a constant flow. And like, the best that you can do is to try to be balanced in the middle of that flow and let it, and move with it, rather than I'm this kind of person or I'm that kind of person. Because all of that is not real. Like, you're every kind of person. We're all everything, and different people are tuned in to different frequencies, but to try and shut yourself off or close yourself off because of like what you're saying, most of the time it's because of fear, and that's not going to get you anywhere.
No, it's not. Especially as we enter this age of more AI and more, we're going to go through a period of massive disruption, and people are going. I just heard this thing. They're like, with AI, computational thinking is going to become less and less important, and people who are more empathetic and more, it might have been Sam Altman or someone was saying this, that people who are more empathetic and can use these computational tools to really channel that creativity and empathy are going to fare much, much better. So if
human connection, how we relate to each other, human connection, how we relate to each other, how we influence each other. That, I think, that's going to be the last bastion of, what we are, I guess.
Right? I know. It's going to be reduced to that, right? But it kind of makes sense if you think about it. Like, we've been on this trajectory of, since the advent of the vacuum tube computers and the first calculator, we've been on this advent of really, and then spreadsheets, and where we're eliminating our need to compute, right?
Yeah.
As far as mathematically, we're getting to that point where even right now they're very close to making coding, which was supposedly, if you could learn coding, you'll be fine, where now it's like, nope, not so much, because you don't need to code. All you need to be able to do is describe. That's what so much of it. That's right. It's so much now they're saying, listen, the emphasis now needs to be on, are you good at prompting? What does that mean? Can you interface and take your ideas creatively and give them to the AI, and it will give you what you want as far as coding wise.
I feel good about that. That's all I've ever been good at in my whole life. so I'm in. I'm on board because I definitely can't do the other stuff.
Dude, I don't know if I ever told you this, man, but when I was in school getting my MBA, we had people that came from India, and in India, they have like 1.8 billion people.
Yeah.
Every year they take a test, and that test ranks them from number one at 1.8 billion people, all the way down. And then they get scholarships based on it. And so in school, in business school, I went to Tulane, very international school. We had a lot of people we had a good chunk of people from India. And I remember I'd be sitting in finance class, like calculating derivatives and all that. And I was just like, what the is going on here? I could not wrap my head around math. What's that?
They're impressive. I have a few friends in business and people that I know that are from India.
There would be kids.
They're impressive.
The professor would be like, what is this? What is this? And I'd be like looking around going, there's no way that another human being understands what the hell he's talking about. They'd be like, bah, 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 bah. And I was like, oh my God.
Yep.
But when we were in marketing class and we had to, these are native English speakers too. India being a colony of England. So, when we had to come up with creative anything for marketing or anything, they were nowhere to be seen. And they were like, can you help me do this? Can you? And I'm like, yeah, I'll help you. You help me over in finance class for sure. I'll help you. Yep. So, but it's crazy how different people's minds, for me, creativity is much easier. I was okay on math, but I wasn't like that, man. Oh my gosh. So, so it's going to be a really interesting time. And I thought that was fast. I was thinking of you and Sam Altman was like, if you can those people who are creative, I'm like, Jesse's going to be fine.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Super cool. So anyways, so I was thinking about, this week with all the politics, because we keep talking about, it's one of the big things for me is really, really understanding that my mind has algorithms and I want to see the patterns of my mind. And that is very, very, very difficult, right? So you said you read that book and you saw, it's kind of like, I think of it as like mirrors of the mind. When I write about this concept, it's like we need mirrors to see our minds because we can't see our eyes except with screens or mirrors, and we can't see our own minds. So sometimes we have to read something like Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance to go, I have a way of thinking. I think romantically, or I think before that, we were not even aware of our own mind's machinations and our patterns.
Yes. You know what? In this vein, do you journal? Do you write like
I
daily,
write a lot. I write a lot. So, I don't journal, but I write.
So I've always done it for most of my life. I've always kind of I've always, but I don't do it
in what respect? Like, what have you always done?
I just kind of write down how I'm feeling, and I don't do it every day, but I have, across very many years, I have a lot of entries, and I went back maybe, I think it was when might have been at the end of last year, and I looked through like a whole year's worth, maybe even more of entries. And what was so interesting to me was what you're talking about. I saw the patterns. I saw the arc of Oh, I'm feeling good. Everything's good. I'm charged up. There's energy. Oh, nope. Here we go. This is what's happening. And now it's going down. It's going down. And I'm talking about the same things and I'm talking about the same struggles. And I looked at it over the course of like about a year. And it was so interesting to see how there's some pattern here. There's a pattern here. There's multiple patterns at play. And
Wow.
I never thought about it like that. I never looked at it like that. But to see in my own words, just describing how I feel, how it just looked like it was a graph. And it was just very, very interesting to me. And a very like an opportunity to step out and observe from like that vantage point of, you just got a computer at the top of your head that is like, that we haven't completely figured out how to truly program. It's like it's on autopilot,
but I think
it's doing its thing.
It's so interesting because, the way I think about it, we talked about like energy flowing through the body and learning about that and learning about blockages, like they call them samskaras, these impressions in our mind that warp our thinking. And then that's one aspect, this aspect of energy. And then another huge aspect are these patterns. A lot of people call this spirituality, and I don't call it. I call it science. This is all, to me, it's science. It may be ancient science that's rooted with meditation and all that, but this is science. And so you doing this journaling, you're like a freaking scientist that is delving into and exploring your own consciousness. That to me is incredibly powerful. And it's thing that so much growth, because now all of a sudden, when you're in the middle of one of these patterns or these algorithms or these loops, call them a brain loop, when you're in the middle of one of these loops, you can all of a sudden detach from and become the observer of this pattern inside of your mind. That is true when we start to gain true autonomy and mastery of the mind, but it's almost like a lifelong journey. And it took you a year reading the book and then doing your own journaling to start to even become aware of your patterns.
Yeah, just the awareness that patterns exist in the first place. So it's like, that's really
exactly.
goes to show you. Yeah, it goes to show you how deep it truly gets.
Oh, it gets deep, because then you start to say, like, for me, like working with people on getting in shape and losing weight and all that, I'm like, the more you can start to see your patterns, because what will happen, what you'll see is that, okay, I'm really hungry right now and I'm craving some food. All right. And I shouldn't be eating right now. Well, let's back up. Okay. What is causing you to feel this way? Oh, well, I started remembering something that happened when I was 12 years old, and it's creating this energy. We were talking about energy inside of me that's uncomfortable. And we talked about this last week. When we have this uncomfortable energy, we either want to push it away or we start desiring something else to change this. So what do we start desiring? What's one of my patterns? I'm craving ice cream right now.
Yeah.
Why do I crave ice cream at 3:00 in the morning or whatever, or 2 in the afternoon? Oh, I have this pattern. When I do X, Y, and Z, it triggers this loop in my brain that all of a sudden these rush of chemicals of anticipation for fucking ice cream. And guess what? Those things are almost irresistible. And then we beat ourselves up for not having willpower to resist them. That's not the time or the place to deal with this. The time and the place is before the loop gets triggered. And we can only do that when we have awareness of the pattern.
Yeah, you got to know that there's even a loop to begin with. You got to know that it's even a thing. And I think you see a lot. You feel like now, like therapy and everything is kind of becoming more and more popular, which I think is a good thing. But
oh yeah,
I don't even think that, and everything is rooted in childhood trauma, and I believe all that stuff. I believe that there's no question about it that childhood trauma informs a lot of your behaviors.
But let's reframe that though. Let's reframe that to be like, let's not use this loaded word trauma and just say something in the past that causes an impression in the mind, in the subconscious mind, which is 99.9% of the mind. There's something in there, no matter what it was, that caused this impression that we keep looping on. So go ahead.
Well, you said this a few episodes ago, and it's really stuck with me big time, is how do we remove the judgment from all of this? How do we remove the morality from all of this? Because what's obvious is that everybody is struggling with some version of this. And now it seems to be being discovered, through the community of therapy and psychology that, everybody does have like these, responses to traumatic events or, what would be perceived as traumatic events. But now like the next step is how do we remove the judgment, the societal judgment, the self-judgment, the morality surrounding behavior and all that stuff. Because like if everybody's dealing with it and it's manifesting in people's lives in different ways, but altogether it's causing trouble. I mean, like, so what's the difference where, one guy fucking destroys his marriage, another guy, has a drug problem, another guy's
gambles,
eating himself to death, another guy's a workaholic who doesn't pay any attention to anything else in his life. Like, what's the difference? There's no difference. There's no difference other than the judgments and morality that we have assigned, culturally. And like
the judgment and morality are a religious dogmatic holdover from a lack of awareness that this is science of the mind. Once again, right, we have this puritanical religious ethos that's threaded through our society. It's within the fabric of our society, and we got to break free of that. It's about the science of the mind. Meditation is not about this spiritual, it's about science of the mind and creating. Meditation is about using the science of the mind, something like a mantra, to create this distance from the patterns of the mind where we're just the observer. So we can get this distance. We're just practicing separating from it. It's not and it's science.
Yeah. And it's not, I think people get caught up too. And like, the result is being this like being that doesn't really have any feeling one way or the other. And I don't think that's what it is. I think it's like, in its most practical sense, if you can spend more time in observation about how you feel about your experience in the world, you can make better decisions that are going to create more favorable outcomes instead of more reactions that are not based in observation, but are based in instinct response. And because obviously that's where we're all getting hung up. We're all sinking to the level of our instincts. And those instincts are like, biologically created from like running. Yeah.
This very interesting where you think you're again, back to the movie metaphor, you think you're in the front, you're in the front row and you think you're in the movie and you're part of the movie. You don't want to be that dude or girl at the front screaming and flailing because of what's happening on the screen. Detach.
You want to be the guy behind the projector in the background.
Yes. Where you're like, oh, but and to your point, we can still enjoy the movie. The movie is still enjoyable if I'm not a psychopath in the front. In fact, it's more enjoyable. Life is much, much, much more enjoyable when you have the distance and you realize, you want to get caught up in the movie sometimes and enjoy it. You want to feel loved. You want to feel connection and human, all that. You just don't want to be like sucked into the drama of it all.
Yeah.
And that takes like what you're saying, where, that like things like journaling. That's why the samurai, they did so much besides just training. They understood what we're talking about. They understood that in battle, Mushin mind, they understood they didn't want to be just caught up in the emotion of battle. They wanted to be cool and collected and allowing their intuition to work. So they didn't just train with swords. They did calligraphy and tea ceremonies and meditation and all of these things. That's why I love the samurai, because it's like, and I think being a musician also teaches you that same thing, teaches you to, okay, learn everything that you can about theory and all that, then let it go and just be in the moment and feel it and enjoy it.
Play. It's just play. It's not like you're not aiming to do anything. You're just playing and it's just flowing. And that is one of the best states that I've ever experienced in my life. There's no expectation. Yeah. There's no expectation. It's just going through you. Fucking A.
dude, I just saw I'm going to have to send it to you, but I just saw this article in Popular Mechanics. Popular Mechanics is really cool right now. It's like, it's got, do you ever read it or you ever see the articles that come up? But they've got all these articles on like UFOs. It's all this cool fringe shit and consciousness. And they just put out an article about a paper that was, I think it was recently published, on really going into Terence McKenna's stoned ape theory that Rogan talks about a lot, where they're like, yeah, it looks like, that hominids from 6 million years ago in Africa, when they came down from the trees, they were eating psilocybin, psychedelic mushrooms. And that likely accounted for, I haven't seen, now I've heard this theory from Terence McKenna and listened to some of his talks on it, but that really, it looked like that could have really informed consciousness, because psychedelics are, back to what we're saying, a way where we detach from the mind and we could kind of watch it playing out. And it's like, whoa, my mind, I'm not my mind. So anyways, I thought that article was really cool. I'm like, this is pretty dope.
Yeah.
Right.
It's wild stuff, man. It's wild stuff.
I know.
You just keep peeling the onion, go deeper and deeper.
Yeah, but I think that, so I think I love like the idea of, and having done psychedelics for me, because to me it is so close to meditation. Meditation for me is that same space where you can observe your mind, your own mind, and you can observe your emotions and the energy in your body. And as it's clenching up, you know what I'm saying? And you're watching it, you're like, if I get caught up in this emotion, like on a heavy psychedelic trip, I'm in for a really, really, really bad time.
Sure.
And you actually let this thing go, I got to just go with life, I'm about to be in trouble for 7 hours.
The last time I ate mushrooms, I felt that way. I saw the horizons kind of form. And I saw like getting taken down like a path of anxiety and paranoia, and like, but was able to resist, let it pass by like a cloud, and then stay in that, and it's very interesting stuff. Very interesting.
But isn't that life? Right? We were talking about like everything happening politically. It's like, and this is what we were saying with Zen, right? It's the same damn thing. It's just another mirror of the mind and the same thing. It's like, if we cannot learn to say, okay, this anxiety is rising up in me as I'm watching the news or I'm watching whatever, I need to not give in to this, because if I do, I'm going to suffer. This is going to create suffering in my life, which is like on the psychedelic trip, where the same thing, if you give in to that anxiety and emotion, you're in trouble.
Yep.
And it's the same thing in life where, you feel it rise up, you're watching the news. Dude, it all circles back to what we were saying too. If I notice that, dude, so let me tell you, I'm so embarrassed to admit this, right? But I'm going to admit it.
Let's go.
So 4 nights ago, for the first time in my life, I woke up at 3 a.m., right? Because I kind of wake up at 3, got to take a piss, whatever, get a drink of water. I just tend to wake up. So for the first time, I got on TikTok, right? And I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and 2 hours pass, right?
Wow.
And I'm like, I got to stop this. So I put down the phone. I know this is the worst behavior ever, right? Sleep is the most important thing for recovery and health. I wake up in the morning, I can't get back to sleep. I'm tired all day. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do this again. Next night, wake up at 3 a.m., take a piss, get some drink of water, come back, get on TikTok. I start scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. It is the most addictive thing I have ever, not the most addictive thing, but very addictive thing.
It's close. I tapped out of TikTok. I got off of it.
Dude, it's worse than Instagram. It's worse than anything, dude.
No, TikTok.
Oh gosh.
TikTok serious fucking business.
So then I go to sleep, right? I finally fall back to sleep, wake up, and now I'm 2 days tired, and I'm exhausted, man, throughout the day. I got work. I'm just freaking. And so then last night, woke up at 3 a.m, and I'm like, nope. Not doing it, man. And so I did not, and I got a great night's sleep, but it's so wild how the brain, like they have engineered this thing to be so fucking addictive, man. Yeah. And this pattern, my brain fell into the pattern and I couldn't stop it.
It's perfectly wired up with our psychology. It's like it taps directly in to our psychology. And it's like, it's giving you all of the action and sex and fear and craziness that
everything you want is everything. If you watch a video, I'm realizing it. If you watch a video for 1 millisecond
3 seconds
longer
exactly.
than the other one, then more of those come up. Like that algorithm is magical. I think what's really fascinating, and we'll have to talk about this on a future episode. I think what's really fascinating is I was talking to a friend of mine, and he has a kid, and his kid, he was like, dude, all my kid wants to do is eat potato chips all day. Kid doesn't want to eat anything else, right? And I'm like, you have to realize that unless it's like just vegetables out of the garden, fresh produce, if it's not fresh produce, then it was engineered in a lab to become the most addictive things. Cheez-Its, they didn't just happen on the first go round. Someone created a recipe and then they consumer tested it until it was so addictive. They're like, okay, we're ready to go. We got enough hydrogenated oils in this thing. We got enough carbohydrates. We got enough sugar. We got enough cheese. We got everything we need. Put it on the shelf.
Consumption. Just keep consuming.
Every product in the grocery store on those shelves has gone through that process. That's what food is.
What's wild,
and for the mind now too.
It all leads back. It all leads back to coping mechanisms. It all leads back to trying to fill that existential void that's in your soul, and you don't even know what your soul is. It all leads back to that. Everything leads back to that. All of these things, whether they're diabolically engineered or they're just a response to the fact that we need to fill these voids, and it's just kind of, supply meets demand, so on and so forth. It's just this piece of the human experience that hopefully somehow, some way we're going to navigate beyond.
Dude, for me, and again, confession time, for me, if waking up at 3 a.m., I was thinking about my daughter and how much I miss my daughter. She lives in England. And then that got my kind of like, I don't feel good. I'm missing my daughter. TikTok. All of a sudden I'm on TikTok and it's distracting me from the loneliness that I was feeling. And now I'm scrolling for 2 hours. And now my next day is shot.
Yep.
And so without a question, you're absolutely right. So to become aware that, okay, if I think about my daughter and I'm missing her, it's going to I'm going to want to cope because the energy in my body is this loneliness, and I want to make it go away. It doesn't feel very good. So I start doing something to cope. Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Wild. That's where food addictions, alcohol, all of it.
Everything.
But
everything.
On a positive note, you're absolutely right. I think the theme of this episode, without question, is when we can become aware of those patterns, then we could say, okay, if I wake up at 3 a.m, I start thinking about my daughter, then I need to understand that the next step is to pick up the phone and start TikToking. That's not good. So let's do something else. You know what I mean? Whatever it's going to be to deal with that. So that pattern, that loop doesn't get triggered. So and to me, that's the way right there, how you deal with an overeating issue or you deal with a drink, is just to be aware of it. Like you said.
Fucking A.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, this was a good one, man. Another really heavy one, but great.
That's what we do. It's what we do.
Really
right
great.
Here.
What do you anything you've been consuming or that's cool that you've been doing?
I told you about the bear. The show.
Oh,
the
yes,
bear.
You did. Yes, I can't wait to start it.
I'm still there.
My daughter said the same thing. I was talking to her about it. She's like, it's the best. It's the best.
It's amazing. It's amazing shit.
I can't wait to watch it. So you're still into that?
Yeah. What about you? You got anything new?
No, but I just picked up a book by Keanu Reeves and China Melville, who's a sci-fi writer, really cool dude, great writer. And I think Keanu Reeves had done a graphic novel and they collaborated on this novel. So I'm about to start reading that. So I love Keanu Reeves because of The Matrix, and China Melville's great. So I don't even remember the name of the book, but look it up, find it on Amazon. So I'll let you know how that is.
Cool.
And I'm going to play some guitar.
Fucking A.